I'm going to do a tutorial today for 3D coat, some UV mapping and texturing. Basically, we're going to start by going to New and UV Map Model. We're going to choose an OBJ model. We're going to leave the UV mapping type at Auto Mapping. This will give it some UVs, but they won't be great for our purposes, as you can see. There's, to be honest, if you painted it in the paint, it would be fine. But I want to actually go through the process of putting some UVs on a model. So basically we're going to go to clear seams and just have a bit of a look at the model and see where it needs edges putting in. We're going to use the UV path tool. Basically you kind of click and drag and draw lines along the edges on the model to break it up into areas that will get UV'd. We just click and drag to close these end ones, and you just press enter to mark a seam or escape to cancel. So as you can see, that's been separated off as its own little UV island. It's just about looking at the model really and trying to figure out how to break it up best for the UVs, and this kind of takes a bit of practice. So I'm just going to go around all the fingers at the minute just so as we can separate them off. And you don't have to do it this way, it's just the way I'm choosing for this particular bit. And again, when you come to closing off the loop, just click and drag on the end one, press enter, and that area is separated. It's just a free hand model that was with Cinema 4D. I just chopped it off the free body that comes with it and closed up the end, but the end doesn't really matter, it's only going to be a small model in a scene I'm using. Again, still on the path tool, we're going to divide the wrist and the hand up into a kind of a front or a top and a bottom. And with the thumb we just keep using escape to cancel the selection and then start a new one, and we click and drag to close that, press enter, that seam's marked. Very quick process. You don't have to, if you're doing something like hard edged or whatever, you're better off just using the auto seams on here, and you know, you can UV map something very quickly. Just going to come around to the front of the fingers and divide those off. Just click and drag, press enter, click and drag, press enter, and click and drag and press enter. I'm just going to put a seam up the inner edge of each finger as well, just so as it can break it open and UV map it. And if you're doing some edges as well and you don't like it, just Control Z and you'll step back to the previous edge that you were drawing. You can draw it in stages. It doesn't have to be done all in one line. And just pressing enter at the end as well to mark those seams as a cut, if you like. So basically all we're doing, we're cutting it into manageable chunks. And we go into here and we press unwrap. As you can see, if you watch the UV preview over there, we get a nice unwrap with you know, relatively distortion free for what we want it for. And if you have a look at the texture editor in here, the model has still got the old UV map on, so in the UVs you need to go to apply UV set. So if you click there, press OK, and as you can see in the texture editor in the paint section here, you can see the new UVs are applied to the mesh. And then from here it's just a case of painting as usual and creating your layers. I'm just going to go through a quick process of doing this and adding a texture. Basically, if you double click on a texture, it comes up and you can manipulate the size, shape, position, rotation, scale, and the opacity of how it looks while you're painting. You can put it on auto so as it goes off when you paint, so you can see on the model exactly as you paint it. But for now I'm just going to put it on 5%. because this texture is big enough to fill the whole screen. And we'll just do a quick job on it with the airbrush, and like I say, we've got kind of a white grey tone as the colour, because this is kind of a tint. If you have a red, I'll show you later, it will obviously paint it with a red tint to it. So you need a nice light colour to paint. Normally white will get it, you know, perfectly clear. And we're just spinning it round, and see where these stretching bits are. We just spin it round and paint over those. Just using the right click and drag to change the brush size. And I mean, you can spend as much time as you want on this part. You know, you can go into every single corner and make sure there's no stretching on the whole mesh, if that's what you need to do. But for the purposes of this, I'll just do it as quick as possible. Just paint at the insides of the fingers and on the back of the fingers. Basically, when you go towards the edges, it starts to project off the edges. I think there's a setting somewhere to stop it from doing that quite so much, a kind of fade off setting. But for now, it's just as quick just to paint them out. And all I'm doing at the minute using this particular texture, it's just a piece of rusty old metal texture. And I do like to use seamless textures as well, because that way if you do have to repeat them, they work that bit better. I'm just going to put a base texture on here, because it's kind of going to be a zombie hand, as you've seen from the initial scene. Just going to turn the grid off, just because it's getting in the way a bit. And it's just a case of spinning around and checking, you know, where bits are stretched and painting over them. And you just double click the texture to bring it up and close to shut it down. Just going to create another layer on top, just for the kind of cracks and blood kind of texture. And again, this is just a rusty texture. If you go into texture, you can choose, if you double click, press new rather, and you can choose you know, some rusty textures, rusty metal. You can also choose like a depth map and a specular map, so as you're painting the bump and the shininess at the same time as well. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to use the colour map. And like you see, the bar at the top, you can kind of rotate, move, scale, stretch, and paint from various angles. You can distort the texture. And as I was talking about earlier, if you use a red colour or a green colour, for example, it will tint the texture that you're painting, which, you know, in some processes that's what you want to do. But for now, we'll just choose a light white colour, and we're just going to dot and dab a few bits of this stuff on. And it's just a kind of white metal panel with red rust on it and everything, but it makes a great kind of cracked, decaying skin kind of effect. And again, it's just a case of going round and painting it on from each angle. And just keep spinning the model. You can change the tiling of the texture, you can turn that on and off. You can change the opacity of the texture that's being shown, and you can also do cube mapping there, which sometimes is very useful, because it'll just, you know, automatically paint the texture how you want it mapped onto your model. But I prefer from camera, it kind of gets projected from the view that you're looking at the model from, especially on these kind of organic kind of things, but it will work on hard surface stuff too. Again, we just keep flipping the model around, looking for stretched areas and stuff, and just keep changing the size of the brush and dotting and dabbing some bloody bits on. And you can spend as much time as you like on this kind of thing, and very quick and easy to bring a model in and UV map and paint. Just going to merge this layer down. You've got various operations if you right click on a layer here. And I'm going to use a couple of other tools, just the brush tool a bit further down. You've got kind of saturate, darken and lighten, which is kind of like dodge and burn, and sharpen and smoothing. And you can swap colours for other colours and all sorts of some pretty cool tools here. Well worth looking into. For now, I'm just going to use the darken just to put a bit of detail into the fingers, make it look a little bit bruised up, and define the kind of palm shape a little bit. And again, you can use the light, and changing the opacity up in the top affects how much it gets. And you can also turn on the for the radius, you can turn on the pen pressure, so you know the harder you press, the thicker the line you get, or the finer line you get. But for now, just going to put a few highlights and things on the backs of the fingers and the knuckles, and you can use this to put some kind of veins on there and lines and various details. Also, this texture we've put on here, you could kind of enhance it a bit, you know, putting a bit of a highlight around the edges of the wounds and things, and then switching to the darken to put some insets in on the other things. They all help to look a little bit more inset and bumpy. But I mean, we could have used the depth map and turned normal painting on, and we could have done it that way, which probably would have been better. Like I say, put a bit of darken down the edges of the wounds and that, just to make them look a little deeper and inset. Back to the airbrush. I'm just using the V key to pick colours from the texture. Each time you press it, whatever colour is underneath the cursor is chosen as the airbrush colour. This is great for like picking up lights and darks just from within the image already, and we can put some veins on there to give it the horrible diseased kind of look. It's very quick to pick colours from the texture. Then if I want a light colour, I can just pick a bit of a light colour and put some fingernail kind of details in there. Obviously this is just a 1024 by 1024 texture. You could have gone you know, 2 or 3 times higher than that if you really wanted close-up details and things, but there's more than enough detail on this for what I want to use it for. Just going to be a body part lying around in a background of a scene. So and that's it really. If you go to export model and give it a name, just call it hand painted. We won't bother turning on the export normal map because we haven't actually done one for this, but the process of this, we're just in a texture. So that's it really, it's exported. We'll open that up in Cinema 4D for example. Import the mesh. There you go. Quite a low poly model really, but with plenty of detail in the paintwork. I'm just going to load the texture that was exported, hand painted default colour .png. I'm going to set it to display 1024 in the editor so as we can see the details in the editor quite well. Needs the specular plane with a bit. Just add a quick couple of lights to the scene. Turn the shadows on, just give it a bit of a orangey kind of colour. And just add another light over the other side, give it a kind of bluish tint or something, just for testing. Turn an anti-alias into best. We're just going to copy the colour, copy the channel, and we're going to paste it into the bump channel and just set the strength up to about 70%. The spec, we're going to take the width down and the height up so as we've got some fine little highlights. This gives it a kind of shiny, wet kind of look. Probably a bit too much on that, but again we could have painted a spec map in 3D coat, which is something I'll cover in future, and then this would have given us nice dry areas and shiny wet areas, which, you know, in some models that's exactly what you need. So I'm just making a copy of this now, just to do a little quick test render, just to show you the finished model. Do just manoeuvre it into place. Just going to change the spec, take the width down a bit and the height down a bit, just to make it a bit more realistic. It was a bit too shiny. And just press render, and there you go. Nice little zombie hand to throw in a scene. That's it really. I hope you found it useful. More tutorials coming soon.